Hi, Anton.
Hi, Terry. How are you?
Good, very good. How are you?
I'm just doing fine. I turned myself around so we can look at the outside since it's so pretty.
I like that. I like that.
Hello,
I
all.
might stop my video while I finish lunch.
You're good. Hope everybody missed that 526 traffic this morning, or the Ravenel traffic, but
I was coming the opposite direction, thank God.
yeah, well, I got in some of it, but I told Elizabeth, just go have lunch with your mom. So, or breakfast with your mom. I'm like, don't even try that.
I'm supposed to go downtown to pick up a client who could not rent a car to take them to go see a property out at Charleston National. So that'll be interesting.
Oh,
Yeah, well, and it's Bridge Run weekend, so it's not just the accident traffic, but I mean,
I
I think
know.
the normal traffic's going to be a mess this weekend. So make sure you
Yeah.
give yourself a little extra time. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. So I was just looking at Market Monitor, and there's some glitches in their system because, and I know it feels like this, but their inventory shows 0 for March. So it shows there's 0 homes for sale for March. I know it feels like that, but I know that's not correct. So I'm probably just going to be doing some talking here because their system, I don't know if it's just because it's the first and it hasn't caught up, but there's some glitches in their data.
Okay.
But so, I mean, we're hitting, I still feel like, where we're at on inventory, and just looking at my calendar, looking at it every day, I still feel like we're forming this bottom. It's just taking a long time to do so. When I looked a few minutes ago, we're getting close to 1100. I think we're going to get up to 1100 this weekend, if not today. So I feel like the last 45 to 60 days now, we've been sitting. Yesterday we crossed 1,000 again. This is the 12th time we've crossed that 1,000 number on inventory. So you can see we're just going back and forth, up above it and down below it, up above it, down below it. So it's definitely a sign of reaching a bottom. It's just taking a long time to kind of finalize that bottom. I'm sure, with these higher interest rates, that's going to start to, slow down demand. And I can tell just from talking to buyers, now their price point, if it was 750, now with the new rates, they're like, well, maybe we don't need to look that high. But here's the challenge for buyers right now. If truly you had a buyer that was looking up to 750 and losing out to multiple offers on looking at those, well, dropping the price to 650 doesn't make the house that much more exciting, does it? And
Because you're
it
just
also,
going to be in competition with those buyers.
you're going to be in competition with those buyers, and that 650 house doesn't look like that 750 house, right? So the buyer's expectations from actually securing a property are starting to change. That, if rates are 4.75 and they were 3.25 when they started looking, that's a huge difference in their payment. So, I mean, I definitely recommend, if you've had some buyers that have been house hunting for a little bit of time, it's like, hey, double check with your lender what their current rate is, recalculate the payment, and make sure you still have an accurate price point for your search. And I know we discussed this in before, is that, okay, well, so many things are going over full price. If their price point is 650, do you look at 600 houses so you can offer 625 and try to win? So, we're definitely pushing that envelope of the buyer's comfort level of, hey, we were looking up to 750 2 months ago, but now because of interest rates, we're capping our search at 650, but realistically, we need to cap our search at 6, so we can offer 625 and hopefully get a house. It's definitely changing those dynamics. And it's not solving our supply problem necessarily. I mean, even if it slows down, and I know we've discussed this before, but think about what that's doing to sellers right now. From the motivation of a local move. Yeah, if somebody's moving to Chicago or Boston or for a job or family or whatever the reason is, that's not going to stop them. But if they're just trying to buy a bigger house, slightly nicer house, different neighborhood, that might stop them. you know, just from a standpoint of if they're at 3.25% and they're going to 4.75, it's the same thing. It's, you know, the house they're buying is less affordable and they're giving up what historically has been an all-time low in interest rate. So it's these dynamics that we're going to feel here, you know, and again, we're still unwinding some of this pinup demand. So you still have so many buyers out there that are jumping on, you know, contracts, and we're still getting through that list of the backlog of buyers. But at some point, that backlog of buyers we will work through. And I'm not saying when, but at some point we're going to work through it. And then we're left over with more of an even playing field. And it's going to take two things. It's like we need a little bit less demand and we need more supply. The more supply, I don't know where that's going to come from, because I don't know if anybody else has had experience with new construction, but I mean, I got a house that traditionally should be done very quickly, and now they're telling her another 2 months. And I got another house that's being built, and it's like there's no cabinets. And it's been sitting there for 30 days and nothing is happening to that house because they don't have cabinets. So, you know, we're on top of everything else, we're trying to increase that supply, but builders, between supply chain issues and to some degree labor issues, having enough skilled labor, you know, it's hard for them to get ahead of this curve. You know, and you can see, you know, the transaction count is starting to slow down from a year-over-year standpoint, just because we just don't have enough houses for sale. And I know Market Monitor, again, it's not all correct today, but from a closed sale standpoint, you know, as of today, we've closed 1,781 homes in March. And last March, we closed almost 2,200. So for ballpark, we went from 1,800 closed sales. We had 2,200 closed sales in March last year, 1,800 this year. So that's a 400 transaction drop in 1 year. But that's obviously not reflecting on prices. The prices are 14 to 15% higher. It's strictly transaction count. And, you know, transaction counts has a huge play on obviously our business and the industry as a whole. Of think about what happens to real estate closing and how many, you know, hands touch that, you know, from movers to, you know, closing attorneys, insurance agents, you know, inspectors, photographers. I mean, think about all the money that's generated and spent in a real estate transaction. And if we're going from 2,200 last year to 1,800 this year, that's a pretty significant change in 1 year. Now, you know, it's only April 1st. I'm still sure there's some more off-market stuff that will come into MLS and be closed out, but we're definitely going to close on a lower count than a year ago, because as of right now, it's 19% lower. And again, what's amazing is the volume is so high that right now on a volume count, we're only 2% lower. So even though we're 18%, 19% less in transactions, we're only down 2% on volume. And by the time agents close everything out, we're probably going to be even or ahead. So we're going to close $1 billion in March again, which is kind of the pace we were at for most of last year, is closing $1 billion or more. But, you know, until we get some more inventory and until builders can build a little bit quicker, you know, we're going to start to run into challenges of keeping up this pace of sales. And again, you know, watching the media, it's like everybody's now, you read all these articles, it's like, are we in this bubble? And you know, you'll have people arguing both sides. And, you know, my argument right now is going to stick to the fact of just watch supply and demand. You know, until we see signs of more of a, I mean, we are so far away from a balanced market, much less a bubble, right? You know, a balanced market is, and let's just be balanced as of 2019, felt like a fairly, I would say, a fairly normal market, right? You know, buyers and sellers negotiated, worked on repairs. So when we look at 2019, we had 4 months of inventory. So again, waiting for Market Monitor to put the March numbers in there, but we're about 0.6 months of inventory. So, you know, even if we slow down on buyers and we can only close 1,800, and I'm just doing some math real quick, if we close 1,800 in a month, you know, we still need 7,200 listings to have 4 months of inventory. we're at 1,000 for the most part. So we're going to go up 7-fold on inventory. When is that going to happen? So that's assuming our transaction count comes down from last year and the previous year. We still need 6,000 to 8,000 listings. Let's just give it a range to be a balanced market. So, I know all these people are saying, well, the interest rates are going to slow things down. Well, guess what? If you're moving from Chicago to Charleston for a job, or maybe you can work from home, you don't have a house in Charleston at a specifically low interest rate. So you're going to buy a house, and if you have to get a mortgage, you're going to buy a house based off your payment at that current rate. So it's not going to stop you from, if you're traditionally a homeowner, you're still going to want to be a homeowner. So it's not going to stop that person from purchasing a house, even if the rates are higher. And I know, the forecast for rates is, they've saying there's probably another 6, at least an additional 6 more changes this year of a quarter point. Well, we went from 3.25 to 4.75 pretty quickly, right? And that's 1.5%. We've only bumped the rates. The Fed has only bumped the rates 1/4 point, right? So the next 6 forecasts, in my opinion, a lot of that is already priced into the mortgage rates. It's not like we went up 1/4 and mirrored what the Fed did. We went up 1.5%. So, a lot of that is already built in there. And I'm not saying rates aren't going to be between 5 and 6, but a big portion of that increase is already built in. And we're still feeling that spring demand happening. So, when you look at historically, and I wish I could pull up Market Monitor on here and if it was updated, but I'll do it next time. It's very interesting because I was going back and looking, and again, 2020 and 2021 being rather unique years. But if you look back historically, most of the appreciation in Charleston on a median price happens the first 6 months of the year. So if you were to look at appreciation in Charleston, January through June, July period, that's where let's say we appreciated 14%. When you look at it, that 14% happened the first half of the year. And then the second half of the year, it kind of goes sideways. It doesn't go down normally. It just kind of meanders sideways. And then the next year comes around and it goes up the appreciation again the first 6 months. So what we're feeling right now, because did the market right now, did it feel this way in November and December? Not to this level, right? It was still a seller's market, but it wasn't, hey, I got 20 offers on this house the first weekend type of market. So what we're experiencing right now, being April, the middle of the first half of the year, we're experiencing this run up in prices. And then the second half of the year, you expect it to kind of slow down any increase and maybe even go sideways, because that's what it does in a normal year. And I'm talking about pre-COVID normal years. If you look 2019, 18, 17, it's a run up the first 6 months and it's kind of sideways the next 6. And, interest rates being at, mid to high 4s at this point, it means that, we've kind of already priced in. And I know some of these closings happening, some people are locked in at the lower rates, but anybody writing a contract right now, they're going to be locking in at the higher rates. So, we should feel any effect of the higher rates in the next couple months. And especially, I would say the second half of the year, watch that closely to the buyer's mindset and how much demand are on the homes, because, by the second half of the year, everybody's going to be buying at those higher rates. So it's something to watch, but, homes for sale, if we're at 1,000 and we increase 25 a week net homes for sale, we're still only going to be at 2,300 by next year. So we started the beginning of 2021, we started with 2,337 homes for sale. And then, we gradually worked our way down to under 1,000 over the past, 40 days, but we'll probably be lucky by the end of the year to be back up to where we were the beginning of 21, which was an extraordinarily low level of inventory. So, and again, when you read the national articles and everything, there was one on, and I'll try to, and I can probably send this out to everybody, but there was one that showed where people were moving to and from. And the net inflow, like I think half the people in California are moving either to the Mountain West states or to Texas. And then you look at the Midwest and the Northeast, and everybody's moving to the coast, the Carolinas, and Florida. And that growth in the population is happening in our area, and it's net depleting in some other areas. And that's not going to change based off the interest rates, right? I foresee there you still have people, and yes, some businesses are still starting to go from completely virtual to maybe a hybrid or wanting people back in the office. I mean, I know somebody that I just heard of today that works they work for a company that's based out of Cincinnati. Well, they just informed her they want her back in the office. So, that's kind of changing some dynamics. I mean, not to the full scale back to, the normal work from everybody's working from the office, but some businesses are starting to require that again. But, obviously some businesses are never going to turn back, and some jobs are never going to turn back from the work from home. So, Charleston's still the benefactor, if you want to call it that, the benefactor of people moving here because of, if you can work from anywhere, why not work from a coastal city? And I'll see if I can find that out and have the office send it out. But it was a very interesting map of every county in the U.S. and basically if it was an inflow or an outflow of population. And it was definitely like the west coast of California, it was all outflow. And then you look at the Mountain West and it was all inflow. Texas, especially the big cities in Texas, Houston, Austin, San Antonio, Dallas, all inflow. The Carolinas, Georgia, Tennessee, and Florida were big inflow states, especially along the coast. So, we're still feeling all those dynamics. And again, I also see, from the stats we're looking at, you're watching some sellers still get a little bit too exuberant with their prices and kind of overshoot the market. And you're seeing some price changes. I saw, and again, I don't really do expireds, but I saw a decent number of expireds today. And that's, to get to expired in 2022, that means you've been on the market for a period of time overpriced for that period of time. So, eventually the market will return to a normal balance of you'll have people that overprice and they go all the way through their listing agreement and the property will expire because, they outprice themselves from the market. In each individual area, you still have to watch pretty closely, but for the most part, every area in Charleston is a very healthy seller's market at this point. New listings. I mean, if you look at new listings coming on the market, and again, I apologize that Market Monitor doesn't have everything updated, but we're off 15% on new listings from a year ago. So March of 2021, we listed 15% more properties for sale. So, I mean, this is our challenge is finding the motivated sellers. That motivated seller seems to be the missing part of the transaction, right? We have enough motivated buyers, but we just can't find those motivated sellers. Pending sales the same way. We're down 11% on pending sales from year over year. So what's pending sales is going to tell us is that, I know it's April, but if we're off 12%, 11% on pending sales, that means the numbers for April, May, and June are not going to match what happened last year. So, all those year over year numbers are starting to deteriorate, except for on the price front, right? We're still up 14 to 15%, for the area. So price is still going up, but transaction counts really becoming where the risk is. And it's because we have to find the motivated sellers, especially now with the higher interest rates. So, I mean, I definitely recommend it's a good time now that we kind of understand that was the low in interest rates. This is the new world that we live in. Here's where the current rates are. and reevaluate all your sellers and buyers. Like, go through your buyer list, and if they haven't talked to their lender in 30 or 60 days, because they need to get a full understanding of, based off their current quoted rate, here's their new payment. And they might have to adjust the price of their house down, right? Their search criteria might change. So I feel like it's a good time to go back through the buyers that you've been working with and make sure they understand, what their payment is at the price point they're searching, and get the lender's help to do that for them. Because, I mean, again, rates are kind of jumping all over the place. So their lender could be completely different than the one that you use. So make sure they're getting it from the one that they're qualifying through. But I think it's a good time to scrub your buyer list and go through it. And I think you're going to find some people are going to have to lower their price point, or maybe if they might just get completely out of the market. But it's better to kind of push that question now rather than continue to show them houses and they find one they love and then they find out, wait, here's my payment at the new rate, I can't afford that. So, I mean, do them a favor by helping them, guide them with the current market, but do yourself a favor at the same time. It's like, you got to be working with the ones that are qualified and motivated with the current market status. And I know I kind of mentioned this last time, but when October, November, December roll around this year, it's like you push your buyers, because there's less competition on the buyer side in the fourth quarter than there will be on April 1st, right? The timing of the market is still seasonal no matter what's happening in the world. And that fourth quarter does not feel this. And I know it's maybe not the ideal time to buy a house, but it is if you can get a house without having as much competition. So, keep that in the back of your mind as we go forward in the year. The second half of the year will be a little bit easier for buyers, on a competition standpoint, especially if we can get the inventory up a little bit. We hit a low. The lowest that I saw was 928. And I mean, we're going to be at 1100 this weekend. I'm pretty confident, but it's kind of still finding that bottom. But at some point, we're going to start that journey higher. And it doesn't mean for buyers, it doesn't mean they wait a month and they have 10 to select. It's still going to be a very competitive market. It's just over time that inventory will return, that your buyers can actually look at more than one house at a time. I mean, that's what it feels like right now. A buyer comes into town, even if they're searching for a house, sometimes you have like one or two houses to show to them, and that's it. And the buyers don't seem to understand. It's like, well, that's everything in your price point, because everything, and we're still going through that weekly, we've developed this pattern in Charleston where everybody lists on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and they show it over the weekend. And then all these contracts come in over the weekend. And by Monday or Tuesday, we're hitting a low again on inventory. So, if any house is priced, respectably compared to the active listings and the comps, it's going under contract within the first few days. The median days on the market is down to 3 again. So, I mean, that's, and what I've noticed on my end, I know there's multiple offers, out there, but I also see sellers getting a little bit more ahead of the curve, meaning they're not waiting for 50 offers or 20 offers. They're like, hey, I got 5 great offers. What am I waiting for? I can accept this one that's cash. It closes when I want. It's, above full price. And they're not necessarily always waiting for the entire weekend or 5 days or 4 days and putting deadlines. So that's something on my end. And I don't know if anybody else wants to comment on that. I see sellers pulling the trigger a little bit quicker when they get a great offer in front of them. And I think that will continue to develop that way. Yes, they want to net the highest amount, but if they realize they have several options already, they might just go for one of them and be able to move on, because they might be trying to acquire another property as well. So they don't want to lose the one they're going to. And I know we talked about the Ribbon home cash, guarantee a couple weeks ago. I haven't participated in that yet. I know some agents in the office have. But for buyers, you have to be creative. So you have to explore those options of being able to secure that property. What was the other thing and when you look at, the percent of original list price. So this March, and again, this is incomplete data through Market Monitor, but I think it's pretty close. So this March, the average sales price to original list price is 100.4%, which is close to our all-time high. But last March was 98.9. So we went from 98.9 to 100.4. So it's telling me right now that the buyers are even having to be more aggressive than a year ago on winning deals. I mean, that's a pretty good difference. I mean, 1.5%, on a $500,000 house, that's $7,500, right? So they're offering significantly above asking price. And I mean, I look at some transactions and sometimes it's 8 to 10% above list price is what they're selling for. So that's part of what's driving that. But the buyers are being more aggressive right now, or they were with the March closings, than even a year ago. They're having to outbid other people by a higher amount based off the list price than a year ago. Even with where we're at in the world and higher rates, they're still having to be very aggressive on those prices. I was reading another article that basically says the percentage of deals closing with investors right now is 33%. So a third of the deals closing nationwide are investment deals. And, they could be the mom and pop, investors, they could be the big, venture capital investors, but a third of them. Traditionally, we're about 28% on the nationwide level. So we're 5% higher than normal. And so that's also part of what's causing the situation is you have more investment money coming into real estate. Maybe there's some unknowns in the stock market and other, investments in the world. So people are viewing real estate as a safer place to be. So the investment groups are putting more money into real estate, which is obviously making it harder for your traditional buyers, especially VA buyers, FHA buyers, first-time home buyers. All of those are the ones that are challenged. And while we're on that topic, so where we're headed, so June 13th is where we're going to see the changeover to due diligence only contracts, and you're going to have termination fees. So this is just kind of a warning. It's like, okay, June 13th is not that far away. Right? We have about 75 days before we're going to be, as real estate agents, having to advise our clients in a different manner on due diligence contracts. And some of those are going to come with termination fees. And for your first-time home buyers, they might not have $10,000 to throw at a termination fee, right? That might be your VA, FHA, first-time home buyers. That's a big number to them. Whereas an investor or somebody who's very experienced at buying real estate, they might not hesitate at throwing $10,000 at a termination fee. They feel comfortable enough with their financing, with, understanding the condition of the house, their ability to buy it, that, our newer buyers might get outbid, not necessarily just on price, but on this termination fee. North Carolina has had this in place for, a much longer period of time, and their contract's not exactly the same of what we're going to. But talking to agents up there, that is a challenge for those newer first-time home buyers and people without a lot of money to put down. So be ready and strategize for that, especially if you are working with buyers that get to that point where they're competing with other due diligence contracts with termination. That's going to be even more of a challenge for them to win that deal based off those termination fees. And I know when the new contract, yeah.
Well, I'm not real clear about the due diligence option that we're going to have. Explain to me the termination fee. If it's not used, is that in addition to the price of the house, or does it go toward the price of the house? So
it's going to go to and this is the difference between the North Carolina contract, from my understanding, and here, is that's going to be, if they put $5,000 as a termination fee, that is not lost money to them. That goes towards, down payment, purchase price. So if they choose to terminate is where they risk that money, whatever they bid. And North Carolina is different. North Carolina is basically saying, hey, here's $5,000 to take your house off the market while I do my inspections and my due diligence. And it does not go towards anything. So that's my understanding. That's the difference between the North Carolina and South Carolina contracts, is that we're not as deep in that land up there where it's like it's just spent money and you're not getting any credit for it. Here, it will still be, because you're not paying the termination fee unless you terminate, right? So if you go to closing, that's not a fee. But
And
that-
if during say the inspection period, you find major issues, you just got to suck it up.
And here's going to be the challenge for first-time home buyers. They might not be willing to risk $5,000 in case there is something wrong with the inspection, or they don't get their, there's issues that could. We're going to go through a learning period here, and this is why, when we get the actual contract, I'm sure Joseph and everybody will have classes on it, but it's going to be a learning curve for everybody the second half of the year, because there's no option for repair procedure. There's going to be no as is. It's, if you look at our current contract, my understanding is it's just due diligence. And think about how many due diligence contracts you've worked the last couple of years in this market. Very few, right?
That's right.
Because sellers weren't willing to accept it. So what's going to happen is that it's a very, out of the options today, it's obviously a very heavy repair procedure contract, because that's the way most of them are being written. So the termination fees are going to come into play in negotiations. If you're a very experienced buyer and you have a comfort level of, I am definitely qualified to buy this house, I'm not worried about appraisal, I'm not worried about my financing, you could put a pretty big termination fee on there, and you might win the deal because the seller feels comfortable you're not going to walk from it. But somebody who's doing a VA 100% financing or FHA or first-time home buyer, they might not have that money to throw around. So this is where it's going to be a learning curve the second half of the year when this comes out, dealing with big money investors that might be throwing money around like that. It's going to be a challenge here for some of these low down payment buyers and newer buyers. So it's something to keep in mind, especially, now they have a higher interest rate to deal with. There's going to be some challenge, and obviously it's all about affordability, right? That's why people buy houses, is, it's a place to secure long-term payments at a fixed rate, but it's about affordability. And we have to watch at the same time, watch what the rental rates are doing. Right. And rental rates are up, nationwide, they were up 17% last year, which is a big number. It's as big as basically what the house prices are going up. But that's also a sign, is like you're either paying rent as a tenant or you're paying a mortgage as a homeowner. If rents are up 17% and home prices are up 17%, well, it's a wash, except when rates go from 3.25 to 4.75, then that makes home purchasing less affordable. So the affordability is shifting with a combination of the higher rates and the higher prices at the same time. That's a huge shift in affordability. On the purchase side, yes, rent rates are still going up, but not at the pace with these higher interest rates that the purchase side just went up. Yes, we still have a lot of cash transactions, and those people don't really care what the rates are, right? It doesn't really matter to them. So, we do have a section of the market that is still going to buy a house regardless. It doesn't matter what the rate is today. They have the cash ability to do it. And some people are putting a lot of money down, where a different change in the rate is not going to make a difference in their decision making. But it's affordability at play, and those higher rates are making purchasing real estate higher rates and higher prices. So think about the affordability from a couple years ago to today. It's drastically different. Think about, you're buying a house in the beginning, like even 2 years ago, you're buying a house for 30% less in value, and with a rate of probably the low 3s versus the high 4s. So the combination of those things is showing how, and this is part of what we're dealing with inflation, right? It's yes, we're seeing the appreciation of real estate, but hidden in the background is also inflation happening, right? Windows are more expensive, right? Lumber is more expensive. So everything's more expensive, that's inflationary, not appreciation. So part of what we're experiencing, in my opinion, on 14, 15% growth in house prices, part of it is appreciation, part of it is inflation, right? It has to be. And I mean, you look at, the oil prices going to where they're at. So think about any building material that's put into a house. It's shipped from somewhere to somewhere. It's made with some equipment. All of that is an expense that uses fuel, right, in some form or fashion. So even if the raw materials and the labor, all of that's going up, and now the transportation charges of, and again, it was just a great little example. I ordered a very simple post cap for a fence, and I looked, and it hasn't arrived yet, but I looked, and it's like, it's already been in 6 different cities, right? So that little post cap is traveling around the country and using fuel, whether it's an airplane or a truck. And that little post cap is going to cost more money because of the fuel prices alone, much less everything else. So when you look at the inflationary pressure, which obviously the Fed's trying to get under control by raising rates, that inflationary pressure is also part of what's pushing house prices higher, because of the cost to build. And again, drive up and down like older neighborhoods. It's like there are so many houses being renovated, and I'm not talking about like they painted the kitchen. I'm talking about like major renovations, and good luck in getting contractors that you work with to do a significant job, because they are booked so many months out, and then people are waiting for. I mean, I had a client just order appliances the other day. They told them 8 months for the appliances. So you're watching all these supply chain issues, and that is all causing this inflationary pressure. And that's, the same thing with car prices, right? New cars, used cars, everything's higher. It's because that supply side, the demand is still there, right? Now that we're more or less, let's say, traveling, closer to pre-COVID, we're still using cars at the same pace, and airline fuel at the same pace. So all of that's being consumed, but the supply side, they can't have enough chips to basically build these cars. So what you're witnessing with auto sales is the same thing we're feeling with home sales. If there's a limited supply because you can only build houses so fast, that's going to drive up the prices. The other day when I looked, I think there were 950 homes for sale, and I just did a quick 2022 or newer. So out of those 900, and this is townhomes, condos, single family, but out of the 950, 214 were built in 2022 or newer. So 214 out of the 950 were new construction that were in MLS. I'm not saying there's ones not in MLS, but think about that. We have 214 homes advertised for sale in MLS for a metro area of 750,000 people, right? So do you think the 214 is sufficient to keep up with the demand? I mean, we are nowhere close to being able to build enough houses. And, nationwide, and we've discussed this before, I mean, we are 4 million homes behind. And again, I'm looking for some data to show me this, but it feels like we might even be getting further behind because of supply chain issues, because they can't build fast enough. I have a house under contract with Lennar, and it's a small 1-story house, and it's going to take them about 6 months to build this house, which, they should build this house in 3 months, 3.5 months. So but it's all labor and, supply issues. They can only build so fast. And it feels like we're not helping satisfy the demand by building more. And this is what happened, in the recession, is we just overbuilt houses, flat out. There were way too many new homes being built that were all speculative. And I still feel comfortable that the people buying houses today want them as their primary residence. The new construction builds, there are enough primary residence buyers that they're not trying to buy the house and sell it the day they close on it. Now, I do see some of that happening. I've seen some here lately that there were contracts probably written 12, 18 months ago, and they're coming on the market with nobody ever having resided in the house. And it's not the builder selling it, it's the person who purchased it from the builder. Right. So, and this is what, for those of you who went through the recession, this is what I saw happen quite frequently back then, is that there were so many speculators out there that like, oh, there's a permit cap restriction. This house won't be done for 12 or 18 months. I'll just put $5,000 down. I'll buy it and I'll sell it day one. Right. And I saw that happen a lot. I've seen a little bit of that here coming into this year, where people, maybe their situation changed over the past 12 to 18 months while the house is being built, but you're starting to see a few new houses, or newer, meaning less than a year old. I see some of this in Carolina Park. You're seeing these houses come on the market and they're brand new and nobody's ever lived in it. So, that's something to keep an eye on, because if there's too many, you don't want to see that too frequently, and you don't want to see too many vacant houses being sold, because a vacant house means that's an oversupply of housing, right? If somebody's living in the house and they need to sell it and to move to another one, that's fine. But when you're showing the property it's occupied, if you start seeing a lot of vacant houses that you're showing, that's a sign of, that's a little bit of an oversupply of what's out there. So it's all, having been pre-recession and into the recession, it's a big part of this is just watch what's happening on your end. Watch the numbers, of course, but just get a feel and listen to your buyers, listen to your sellers, listen to what they're saying, and you'll start to pick up on differences of conversation. I mean, I can tell you, I've had one conversation with one of my buyers, and I can tell the rates are quite possibly going to cause a situation where they're not going to buy, because they have a house in Charleston that they live in and it works for them. They were trying to get to a different area, but now with prices significantly higher on top of rates being higher, I can tell the hesitation is coming into play, because now it's a big financial difference, and it might be more than they're willing to take on. So, that's why I think it's important to kind of listen, have those conversations with your clients, but also listen to what they're saying. And you're going to see that if they're saying that, well, other people are saying the same thing, right? They're not unique to this situation. So I think we just have to have our radar up over the next, really the rest of this year is like, okay, watch the numbers, but also listen to your sellers and buyers and try to, decipher, what's really important to them and why they're making decisions to move or not to move. And again, if what I tell people is like, what, if I'm getting listings, well, so is everybody else. Like I'm not so unique that it's like, if things are happening to my clients, they're happening to other agents' clients at the same time. So watch what's happening with your clients, and that is a sign of what is happening as a whole for the real estate economy, for the Charleston market. Again, I'm not raising any flags right now on prices. I'm just kind of raising flags on, we are declining on transaction count strictly because we don't have enough for sale, and the higher interest rates is still going to create that situation where the supply, higher rates will slow down demand, but I feel like it's going to slow down the supply equally. So again, it's not like a seller these days can decide to sell and take the rate with them. That'd be great, right? If the federal government had a program, you could take your rate to another house. I mean, that's never going to happen, but that would be a pretty cool program if you could take your rate with you. That would help everybody out. But don't count on that. Anybody have any comments or questions? And I apologize, I don't know why Market Monitor has us having 0 houses for sale today, but it feels like it, but we don't. We have more than 0. All right. Well, everybody have a great weekend. Say hi to all our visitors coming in for the bridge run in Flowertown and everything else. And stay off the roads if you can, at least crossing too many bridges, because I think it's going to be a little busy out there. So,
Anton, I have a quick question.
Sure.
I'm one of those agents that I just listed a house today, and I said that we'd be accepting offers till Monday. Should I change that, or do you think
so
I'm
this,
okay?
and again, this is me. Like this year, I've been more. I don't put that in up front until I have because ultimately it's your seller's decision to basically convey a deadline,
Mhm.
a multiple offer situation. It's your seller's call. So let's say I'm an agent showing your house, right? And I see that in the notes, right? I'm
Right.
probably conveying to my buyers, look, they're getting multiple offers. What's that buyer might do is say, I don't want to deal with it,
Mhm.
right? So I think there are especially these buyers that have been burned again and again and again, right?
Mhm.
They've written 5 offers and they haven't gotten any. They're so gun shy on going, they're like, I'm just not going to get it, so why bother?
Mhm.
Right? So until I have what I would consider, and as I get the offers, I present them, right? Oh, I got an offer, I send it to my seller. I'm like, what do you want to do? Like, do you want to sit on it until the deadline? Do you want me to convey to other people their multiple offers? Do you want to put a deadline in place? I wait until I find that I can have a conversation with them about something on a piece of paper.
Okay.
That
Would you suggest that I take that out of the agent's notes? Or
I mean, if it were my listing, yes, I don't have it in there because I don't
Okay.
want to discourage offers. And I honestly think part of this is psychology. The buyers are so burned, especially the ones that have been in the market. They're just like, I don't want to do this again. Like,
Mhm.
why bother even attempting? And I hate to scare away a acceptable offer. What I
Mhm.
really want is like, I want an acceptable offer in hand in the seller's eyes before I potentially scare other people away.
Mhm.
That's just, again, everybody does it differently, but that's my
Yeah.
opinion. It's like, get something that's acceptable in hand, and then the seller and you can decide, the seller's going to decide with your advice of, do we put a deadline in? Do we, gather more offers? Do we respond to this one? It's really kind of their decision. And again, I feel like the multiple offers up front being advertised, I think it can scare away people from even going to look at the house.
Well, and I agree. And my thought process was to be more fair to the buyers that are looking, to know that it's not going to just be, on the
And
market for 12 hours.
and I know you, Terry, and you're trying to be fair to everybody, but your obligation is to your seller,
That's true.
right? And from a standpoint, I feel like if buyers, I do feel like buyers are shying away from getting into a highly competitive situation.
Okay.
Even though, I mean, and again, that's what's so wild is that if we didn't have all this competition, I think you'd actually have more offers.
Mhm.
But I think a percentage of the buyers are like, I dealt with one in Harborgate. They had 83 showings, 24 offers, 5 were cash. Right? It wasn't my listing, but I had a cash buyer, and there were so many offers. My cash buyer was like, whatever, I'm not putting it in. Like, they were just so turned off by the level of competition. They knew they were going to have to pay a premium dollar, and it just scared them away enough that they're like, I'm not even going to submit an offer. So again, I feel like for my sellers, and again, it's their decision, but like my sellers, I discuss with them, it's like, look, once we get something acceptable in hand, let's have a conversation. And at that point, if you want to put a deadline in, I can notify everybody.
Yeah, that's true. So
But
is there a way to backtrack what I've done? I mean, I can take it out, but should I?
Yeah, you just delete it in MLS. If you don't want it in agent notes, just delete it. And then if you do get something and you want to put a deadline in, you can go through showing time and notify everybody, hey, here's the deadline.
Okay.
So
Sounds good.
again, every agent will do it differently. That's just my opinion of watching buyers. Because I mean, half this job is being a psychologist, right?
Yes.
And so you have to understand the buyer. Think about your buyers. If you were showing a place and there were multiple offers, what would their reaction be? And a lot of times it's like, ugh, like
Yeah.
again, I don't want to deal with this. I'm not going to win it. I don't have cash. They're going to make up a reason not to submit an offer because they feel like they're not going to win it. Not that they don't want the house, but they
Yeah.
just feel like this is a waste of my time.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you for that input.
So, and again, like you know, we wound into this. Remember a couple years ago, whoever did that, whoever, like, I know it's hard to
Right.
think back, but a couple years ago, whoever put a deadline in offers when they listed it? Nobody,
Yeah.
right? But then it became a very common practice.
Mm-hmm.
And again, at some point we will unwind out of that and not put deadlines in.
Mm-hmm.
But for now, that's very common practice. And again, I have no problem putting it in if that's what the sellers decide.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's important to explain to your sellers their options.
Right. Okay.
So,
Very good.
all right,
Thank you. That was
Thank
very,
you.
very helpful.
everybody
Very
have a
good.
great
Always.
weekend.
Thanks.
Next time, hopefully Market Monitor's up and I can share some more information. So,
All righty. Thank
all right.
you.
Thanks. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye, Jan.
Bye, Anton.
Bye.
Bye, Jan. Bye, Jan.
Bye, guys. Congratulations, Terry.